But the most important thing is that those buses came consigned to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and ought not to have ended up registered in the names of private individuals. But you know what is very vexing about this? I heard Justin Simon saying on ABS that he has instructed Wilmot Daniel to go and collect his bus. Wilmot Daniel ever buy any bus? You ever paid for it? You have any? I mean, I don't understand this kind of barefaced behavior, which is at a minimum is just gross bad governance, at least from an ethical standpoint, for sure.
Yes.
And even if you got away from the legal aspect of it, you're telling me you're so brazen that you're going to go and say that is your bus, you're going back to your bus when you didn't buy it? And if it is indeed, there's a bus that was to provide community service, what community service are they going to provide now? Neither of them are representatives to anybody. So, or none of them, because it's three of them. I was thinking about himself and Jackie. So they are so brazen. And let me tell you, I mean, I haven't read the judgment, but the issue of an appeal is exclusively for the DPP. All I'll say here is that I'll be very, very concerned about any precedent of bad governance that could be enshrined in that judgment. I'm not saying any, but I'm just saying I'll be very, very concerned if there's any precedent of bad governance that may be enshrined in that judgment. Because, last Wednesday, one of my ministers said to me jokingly, sarcastically, he would like to get one of the field hospitals because based on the judgment, he's not a public servant and therefore cannot be pursued for any wrongdoing if he was to accept the field hospital. And ostensibly he will use it as he sees fit to assist his constituents. It's not that he wants it, but the member was just trying to show how flawed that type of thinking is. And again, if that is allowed to stand, then everything that comes to us can be donated to or registered in the name of a parliamentarian for use in his constituency. We have gotten gifts of motor vehicles from the Korean government since 1981. Many of you would have recalled in 1981 when they sent the pony cars. Maybe you're not young, you're not old enough, you're all too young. You all even know about ugly beans now. So. But the point is that King of Sinet sang a song back in 1981. I think it's in Coming Down to Talk to You.
Yes.
And he said, them Koreans want Antigua, so they give them how many motor cars, whatever motor cars, it was 10 motor cars or whatever it was.
Yes.
Enshrined in song. So they've been giving us motor vehicles as gifts. That is the state of Antigua and Barbuda since 1981. More recently, the government would have gotten cars from them within the last couple of years, which Foreign Affairs would have utilized to transport diplomats. None of us in my administration could have contemplated using any of those vehicles in our communities for community service and to get a political gain and a financial gain. Now, it's not a financial gain from the standpoint of, maybe selling it and pocketing the money. Okay, fine, I accept that. But if they didn't have access to those buses, they would have had to incur charges or expenses to transport their constituents. So they had a financial benefit, no matter what anybody say. But I want to say that my tolerance or lack of tolerance, zero tolerance on the issue of good governance remains, notwithstanding that ruling. And no minister in my government can go and take up any asset donated by any foreign government that is intended for the government and people of Antigua and Barbuda to use in a constituency. Can't happen.
Okay.
And if you look at the documentation that I gave you too, you will notice that the buses that came through UNOPS, I don't know the source of the funds, but you will notice that they came consigned to one Harry Josiah. If what's his name could pull up that second one. So in that particular case, if these three buses had come consigned to a private individual like Harry Josiah, and then Harry signed them over to those three ministers, no, that's a different ballgame. And I believe that is the reason why those other parliamentarians were not pursued, because the source of their bosses were different, or the sources were different. These particular three were gifts from the government of Korea. Now, I also heard Harold Lovell bragging, saying that there was so much gaps in our cases, cases, because the three of them, they were badly presented. Bragging, I don't know if it was by design or by error. But I imagine the DPP, when he studies the judgment, he'll make a determination as to whether or not he would appeal. So all I say to them, when they try to turn this into a political issue and to suggest that, it's political victimization, if I had any involvement, I could have advised law enforcement that they probably should have gone for a misdemeanor, misbehaving in public office. Because I recall when Justin sued me as the then Attorney General on behalf of the state, trying to suggest they have had this propaganda saying that I stole government land. I spoke to all of them, Justin and Zahn remained my friends. So I said, Justin, what you all suing me for? I paid for the land, maybe got the concessional rate, but I paid. I didn't breach any of the procedures. I followed the procedures. I went to agriculture, made my application. My application's processed. It went to legal affairs, then back to agriculture, then to legal affairs, to vetting again, then to the Governor General. The Governor General signed. They created some propaganda to say I got a title in one day, which is not true, and took me to court. But Justin said to me at the time that the reason why they went for misdemeanor at the time is that they didn't want to set the threshold too high. I said, okay, fine, I understand why you're doing it. And if I was involved in any way, not I would, because I understand the separation of powers, I would have even whispered to them to tell them, you know what, don't set the threshold so high. Go for misbehavior in public office. Because my understanding, the nature of the charges perhaps are flawed to some extent. But let us not forget that when this matter first went to the High Court and it was thrown out, it then went to the appeals court. And the appeals court judges, 3 judges in the higher court, said they had a case to answer and send it back down. So I find it a little astonishing that a single judge in a lower court now saying that they'll have a case to answer. But I am just stating some facts. I'm not coming to any conclusion. Again, it's a matter for the DPP, and we will see how this thing pans out.